So, it's good that I have my two brothers here,
Right.
flanked by my two brothers. And you know what? I think it's a good opportunity for us to have conversation
Right.
about real life issues.
Mm.
Us is indigenous, is Vanwatima.
Right.
We have a lot of things, especially when it comes to planning of events that are sometimes beyond our control, that we are not comfortable talking about these things. But now that I have you two here with me, I think it's time we start having this kind of conversation. And the conversation I want to have with you guys is, talking about real life issues. If in the event that you are incapacitated in one way, in one shape or the other, or you go to the upper room. If if you watch Eddie Murphy's and I don't remember who the other guy was he was acting with. They talk about the upper room. When we die, what happens? We leave a lot of things unsaid, undiscussed, not with not anyone knowing. So really, it's just a conversation. But I feel like it's something that is important that we need to talk about. So, have you guys ever talked about it, or have you ever written it down somewhere, or said something to someone? If in the event you are incapacitated, if in the event you have say for instance early onset dementia, Alzheimer's, where you are not able to make those solid decisions on your own. Have you talked about it with someone? Did you write it down? How does this work?
Okay, so let me start. First of all, try and avoid getting Alzheimer's by drinking coffee. It's very good for that.
So are you saying coffee stops Alzheimer's?
It delays it, or
delays
it reduces the amount. There is scientific evidence for that, but
Okay.
that's a topic for another time.
Okay.
Now, as far as wills is concerned, we did a joint will with my wife many years ago. But I kind of think the will is not enough, or maybe the will needs to be updated, because the will normally focuses on real estate, on money in the bank and things like that. It doesn't cover the softer issues. So I have been thinking about this, that I do need to put it on record, be it on video like this or written, so that people can refer to the conversation and say, when this guy was in his sane mind, he said he wished to be buried at such and such a place. For me, my grandfather came from Mozambique and settled in Zimbabwe. We never had a kumusha growing up, a bond location, what. So I wanted to also have a kumusha. So I invested in land, and that's where I would like to be buried, overlooking Mozambique. There. That's my wish, and I don't want to be cremated. I want to be buried and put in a garden of rest, so that the children and the great grandchildren will come and say, Shekulu lies here. So that's one thing. I'd like to put those things in place. But I also think that for us African people or Zimbabwean people, it's really important that we make our wishes clear and also respect our spouses, because we've built whatever I have today. I've built it with the help of my wife of 29 years. And she has every right to that. So I can't dictate and say this. If I pass on first, she takes over and she makes the decision in the interest of the family. I don't want my sister, anyone else coming in to say, take this, take that. If she decides to give you something, that's fine. But those things, we have worked together, and you can't really pinpoint and say, oh, I bought this sofa, I bought this, because we did these things together. So I kind of think that for us African people, it's very important because our relatives tend to want to jump in,
Mm-hmm.
you know, in the event of your demise and start dictating terms.
You know, so I like what you've said. I've also done a will, which is really good. But I think what I like about what you've said is really stating out the things that you would like done.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow I think that in our community, we don't want to talk about death,
Mm-hmm.
or that we will die at some point.
Mm-hmm.
So the question I probably have for us is, why is there that fear where as a culture
Mm.
we don't want to even plan
Mm-hmm.
what will happen in the event that we're going to die, because it's inevitable. We
Mhm.
are going to die. So
Mhm.
maybe Gogo, what do you think? Why do you think that there is that fear?
You know, this is why for me it is really nice that I'm speaking and we're talking is family,
Mm.
and you know, trying to put it out there. It's a heavy topic. It's an uncomfortable topic. I'm going to say for us is people of color, but I'm quite sure it you know, it is on every level and every race. There might be difficulties in having conversations about death and dying, because nobody wants to go there, but we know we are all going to the upper room. We are going at some point, and we just don't know when. The toughest thing is when it happens unplanned, because nobody plans for it. But when someone is ill for a long time, you almost kind of sort of know that there might be an end to that suffering of the person, even though you don't know when. But suddenly it can happen, and the conversations do not happen. Why don't we have the conversations? I think it has been something that is within us as a people, that death, it's almost like if you talk about it, you are inviting it.
Yes. Yes.
And that's why people don't even want to talk about it. So the more you put it aside and don't talk about it, it's not going to happen.
Right.
It is also made as if urimuroi,
Right. Right.
we are lawyer. Oh, why are you the one who wants to talk about death and dying? Saga, you are the witch.
Yeah.
So nobody wants to be seen as the one who's pointing out that we are all going to die anyway. So we don't. Where does it come from? I don't know whether it's I'm not sure. I'm not going to speak about it being a biblical teaching, because I have an open mind in it. You know what? And is it a tradition, a culture? Well, like what Manjadzi has just said. Which tradition or culture am I following?
Right.
My grandparents came from Mozambique. They came looking for jobs, or they were dragged by colonizers looking for wealth and made to work in southern Rhodesia, Zimbabwe. So we never had a kumusha where we can say whatever happens, the Zinza, the tribal group is here. So the reason for not talking about it, I don't have a specific tradition or culture to follow. I am African. I follow what I see, and sometimes what we call gundam saira. We just follow what is popular or what everybody else is doing. Is what ends up happening.
Right.
Is it a Shona tradition? Which is, what is Shona? Is it a Zulu tradition? Is it a Karanga tradition? Is it a Ndebele tradition? Is it a Zulu? What is it? You just end up doing what the people that have gone before you or are around you are saying you should do. Which makes it so difficult, because you might have something that you wanted or you want to be done, and it's not done because this is not what we do in our culture. What is that?
Right.
What is that?
I kind of think that culture is dynamic, and it makes it really tricky for us as Africans or Zimbabwean, in that even those cultural aspects are not always captured. I'm not saying there is nothing written. There are things that are written down. However, things get affected with time, with technology and all that. So I want to believe that culture is dynamic. And I want to give you an experience. Growing up in Umfakwasa, I would see when the girls were getting married. Pakwitwa Jetsika. You know, my dad would be consulting. And then there is another man from next door, he throws his own idea. I was, you not die. So there's a lot of influential people who will come in and suggest something or say something, and then it's taken as culture. I want to believe that with the influence of, you know, technology, religion and all that, families need to choose what are their values going to be, and this is how our things are going to be, and make decisions that are best for their families, because culture is dynamic, and in most cases, if you do things right, you might be doing things right in the interest of your own family. Others will emulate, and don't be surprised down the line people start saying, this is our culture. So I want to believe that even in cultural issues, a lot of times they did things which were in the interest of the family, the community, or whatever. And we should always keep that in mind. Culture, I don't believe, is supposed to undermine or make you retrogressive. It's supposed to respond to the changing times.
You always hear this pachivanhu chedu
Right.
ebuntwini bethu in our Africanness.
Right.
We do this.
Right.
But when you analyze some of the things that are being said pachivanhu chedu, they are specific to a certain group.
Right.
And then you might not be in tune with what is being said pachivanhu chedu, and then it becomes a lot of tension. You know, I think the biggest thing that we have as a people is that we don't talk about issues. We do not tell our loved ones about specific things.
Right.
We also don't write it down.
Right.
It is not written anywhere. If one would have to say, let's look at where it is written in this tradition, in this culture, this is what is done. Nobody can tell you what exactly it is.
Right.
So most of us find ourselves mixing things coming from this group and that group and making it our own.
Right.
And sometimes it works and sometimes it brings a lot of confusion. Yeah.
Yeah. You know what I like about what you said is, you said, I think we don't talk about some of these things because there's a fear of, if I talk about this, I'm going to die. Right? But yet death is inevitable. It's going to happen to every single one of us. But I think what you stated when you were talking about it earlier is, if we are to write things down and have it in a will, it doesn't matter what the circumstances will be, whether it be from a cultural norms or what, that is what will stand, because that will be your word of what you want done, as opposed to what may have culturally changed or may be perceived as being the norm. So I think based on that, I liked it, because I remember I talked to someone very close, a very close family member, and I was trying to ask them about what they would like me to do, and they felt offended that I was even bringing up that topic of death and preparing for death, but yet it's going to happen to every single one of us, and it's just something I see as something we have within our Zimbabwean community that we need to talk about.
Absolutely.
You know what makes this conversation even more critical is that we have all scattered in the diaspora. We're everywhere. So that which used to happen, that families are in the same compound or in the same town or, you know, within distance of each other, is no more, because we are all everywhere, which makes this even more complicated. And you know, there are a few issues that I think we should also need to kind of, you know, talk about, since we're on this talking forum. most of us don't understand what a will is, what a trust is, what a living, what is it called? Where you make decisions about your health and your health care, choosing a proxy for your health care. None of those terms are used on a daily basis, or even in conversations in families and amongst us.
Right.
But we are in this world where we are living everywhere on this planet, and those issues are going to arise. And whether I want to talk in terms of basic things that we can start at, because we don't understand whether when you have a will it has to be a lawyer thing or you can do it on your own. And on one of these topics which I think are relevant, I would love to have conversations with a lawyer or somebody who understands the law, who can give us a perspective on what exactly we can do. But say you want to talk about a will. Is it something, a legal thing that you have to find a lawyer for and pay for, or you can just find a paper in a stationery shop which says will and write it and make it known to somebody else that you trust that you have a will which is a pair? A trust, what are they? We all have properties. Let me say, some people have properties here, there, and maybe everywhere. What is it that you are doing or are going to do about those things, material things, in the event of your demise? And the biggest fear that we all avoid is, if you die, what's going to happen? What do you want? There's something that you've said in our conversations today, and I want you to say it again. But before I lose my train of thought, I want you to repeat it. But we're having this conversation, we haven't had any wines or anything. But you said something which I want you to repeat. But let me finish what I want to say. Is I always said it to my friends, and I think I've said it to you guys, that when I was living in the Americas, I always used to say to my friends, my children, my husband, if I die here, amanaka kandakarara ndida kumuka ndichiti mangwanani to the next door. So if I'm here in the snow, I won't be able to say that. What I'm saying is, I felt like in the spiritual realm, when I'm resting in the snow somewhere in Michigan or Iowa, and my spirit wakes up in the morning and there's mounds of snow everywhere, and I say, good morning, it's snowing today in Shona. My neighbors would not understand. So I was telling my friends before imbibing, anytime we had a chance to talk about issues, I would say, I would rather be cremated so that I'm not buried in this cold. And if you can't scatter my ashes in Africa, scatter them here, I'll find my way home.
Right.
And I used to say it all the time. And if anything would have happened for me at that time, I would have hoped that somebody was listening.
Right.
But I wouldn't have wanted people to say, spoiling. I used to say that after a couple of glasses of wine. And I used to say it before imbibing, to say, after we've had a few, you guys are going to say, what you're drunk. So I would make sure, this is serious to me, and I always want to talk about it, and it's hard to talk about, but this is what I want. And it wasn't written anyway. So here's the issue. Would that have jived, or it would have been thrown away? Aiwa matema atidaro handei naye torai hama tiende nayo kuZimbabwe. Would that have happened? I felt if I have to go to Zimbabwe, send me off in ashes. But it wasn't written anyway. I said it several times.
So I think in your case, whatever you've said is largely dependent on who's going to be influential, who wields authority, who may want to dictate. But if it was written, then that gives it a lot of strength. So I think there is an importance in committing things to writing. And I've also heard of a similar thing. One of our relatives actually used to say something after having a few glasses of wine, and whatever their wish was not considered, because they said, well, you know, he might have said it drunk, he didn't mean it. And yet, when you think about it, sometimes we as African people don't have the courage to say how we feel. We will only say it after a few glasses. I once heard of a Latin expression, I don't know whether it's correct, but they said, in vino veritas. In wine there is truth. In other words, after a few glasses,
That's what I was
the truth starts coming out.
Right. Which is true.
Yeah.
Which is true, because it was hidden all along,
Yeah.
because the person didn't have the courage. There's some people call it Dutch courage. So it gives you courage to say what you really want. But my advice would be, let's commit things to writing. And my sister here was asking about wills and trusts, that sort of thing. In terms of the will, I'm not a lawyer, but I'm trying to think about what would have been the spirit of saying the will. The spirit is to catch the wishes of the person, and to be able to ascertain that it is true. It needs to be verifiable. That's why normally we go to a lawyer and someone who is respected under the law to say, no, they're telling the truth. And that's why there's always witnesses, so that it's not your word or someone's word against you, because somebody else was, oh no, I have another will. But I think it's very important that it is verifiable, it is witnessed by someone. The lawyers can comment on whether, if it's not registered with the lawyers and all that, whether it counts or not. But I think it's an issue of what is documented, and can it be substantiated, and if that's the case, then it must prevail, and people's wishes must be respected. That's very important. As far as trusts and things are concerned, I think it also helps a lot in being able to manage, especially our society. Our society in Zimbabwe tends to be patriarchal. Is that the correct term? Yeah, because when our parents died, my sister here is older than me, but I'm the one that was the heir to the estate. So things tend to be biased towards male children, whereas that may not have been my father's wish. So if it was captured in a will, you can overcome that. So to overcome some of these disputes, it might be easier sometimes to then have a family trust. The family trust means everyone can benefit, because the trust will have trustees and then will have beneficiaries. So the trustees will make decisions jointly, and sometimes they even say you are sort of running things from the grave, because you put your wishes in the trust deed, and you say, I'd like things to go this way, this way, this way, and then your trustees will act in utmost good faith to uphold those things, and the beneficiaries are the ones that will benefit from this. So it resolves a lot of these issues and disputes and fights and all that, because things are all stated and clear. And I would say it's very advisable to do that to avoid any conflicts and disputes.
You talked about issues and fights. In the situation you've just given, where you had shared with your friends that you want to be cremated, in the Zimbabwean culture, just the aspect of cremation would have caused a fight. So if you have not got it written down that you want to be cremated, I think that would not have worked. Even if your friends came and said you wanted to be cremated.
Saka, even the two of you, I used to talk to you, they just said,
I want to speak for myself. I would have stood up for you, my sister. And the Neka influence also. Because now I can say, from a male perspective, the leader of the club. But you can only do so
Right.
when you've got somebody who's not going to be steamrolled.
Yes.
Yeah, are you with me?
Yeah,
But
yeah,
Yes.
but if you want to avoid that, or even me coming in and saying, my sister said this, but I'm discuda,
Yeah.
you know, then put it in writing. Then
Right.
it can't be disputed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hold the thought. So you know what? I think this conversation is really important. First of all, I think what we're getting from this conversation is we need to write.
Yes.
Our ancestors did not write because vanga vasina penzura. They did not have pen and paper, but we have enough pen and paper. So I think
Right.
some of these things we need to document, and also we need to make the conversation about incapacitation, death and dying a reality, because it will happen.
Right.
To each one of us at some point we will leave this planet. So if we make it routinely, by not that it's good to sit and always talk about the negative,
Right.
but it's not negative because it's life. It is what it is. So having that comfort in discussing it, maybe we'll start to normalize it. So I know that I do need to. I have written something for my children in a PDF, but they do have. So at least it's a start.
Right.
But I also want to. It would be nice to. I'm hoping someone who is lawyerish is willing to have conversation with me, so that we can find out what the legal way of doing this is. But I do believe writing a will from a paper from what is it, the bookstore, as long as it has witnesses, is legal and binding. But the important thing might be, there's a bit, that we don't have someone who is going to bulldoze and say nabasa. It doesn't hold. What holds true is what there's a P. The seniors of the family have to say. Yeah, most of our families have no grandparents, parents, senior sisters and brothers. We leave a lot of families in trouble because they are children and great-grandchildren to have to handle this when there is someone who is older than them, who then asserts their authority and the way they look at things on the poor children or grandchildren.
Yeah, I would think that committing things to writing makes sure that you've captured it once and for all, unless things change over time. You do the will, then you never have to refer to it again. You don't have to talk about the somber things like death and whatever, because you've done it, it's out of the way. I think it's a lot easier to do it and put it aside somewhere where it can be referred to. Then you can do away with the taboo of being of talking about death all the time, that kind of thing.
But it can be revised.
Yeah, yes, it can be revised. And to your last question, I've heard of people on their deathbed, they ask for a pen and paper and they write something. And I think it is going to be honored. I'd like to think, I'm not a lawyer, but I'd like to think that your final wishes, as long as you were in a good state of mind. If you were already, under dementia and what, it might be construed that you were manipulated. But I think whoever is making an assessment wants to say, were you of a sane mind? Were you under pressure from anyone? Did you have a gun held to your head? If you didn't, and these are your wishes, they should ideally be respected. And personally, I feel it's wrong for us culturally to try and override someone's wishes and say, no, this is not done in our culture. If you choose to be cremated, it's your choice. I mustn't say, no, this is not done in our culture, because that's what you want. And everyone is entitled to making their choices, and those choices must be respected. The only thing is, in this case, you're not able to exercise it, but that's why you committed it in writing, or you told someone, and you hope that person is going to act in good faith and follow your instructions.
Right, right. And you know why I like this conversation is we are talking about it.
Yeah.
And as a culture, being open to talking about it, sharing these ideas is what's going to move us forward.
Yeah.
I think you talked about culture evolves and it moves, which is something that helps us to be able to evolve and move. So I'm glad we had this conversation, and we are having this conversation about will, living trust, death. Yes. Is it scary to even have the conversation?
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
It is.
But it's something that we should definitely have.
I think one of the biggest things that I feel these conversations should be happening is because we continue to be dispersed around the globe, most of us. And then we have our children living in a different place, our parents or grandparents, brothers and sisters everywhere. And there is no cohesion of what needs to happen if in the event one of us or one of our own is not there. So having to either talk about it, make it, it's a somber conversation, but it's life. That's
Right.
what happens. To make it that we are a little more relaxed about talking about it. It's an eventuality that will happen to all of us. Just being able to say, hey, this is what I would like to happen. And while we speak of that, you know, I am a believer in that, you know, there is a power greater than us. Whether you want to call that power Mwari, Unkulunkulu, Jehovah, Jireh, Buddha, Allah, whatever name you give to that power which is greater than us is okay. But what I know, or what I've observed, and I might be wrong, when we pass on as Africans, the tendency is for us all to be streamlined into a kind of Christian burial, whether the person believed ukuthi anoda kuperekedzwa nembira dzevadzimu, ufuna ukuphelekezelwa ngembila ezaba what you call amadlozi. You want to be serenaded by the spirit mediums of your ancestors. All that is shunned off, and you are pigeoned into a Christian burial. You know, for me, here's the thing: I haven't been in that. No harm, no foul, no disrespect. I just haven't been to any church in the last 30 years. Does that mean that I'm an evil person? No. I just don't ascribe to any church anymore. But I still believe in a power greater than me, a power greater than us. So if I have to go, if you put a little bit of tuku or something that is, you know, uplifting, other than the good songs that I was raised on in the SDA church, I would be really chuffed about it. You know, I've always wanted to be a good mbira player, you know, and be able to, if I get, in fact, to tell you the truth, if I remember well, when our mom died, I don't know who done it, but one of our aunties brought somebody who played mbiras. I can attest to that, I remember. And I think this person was called, I can't remember, he was a good mbira player. And he played those mbiras. I'm not sure if my mom would have been happy about that. But I thought it was pretty cool. There was nothing wrong with doing that. And whoever thought that, whether they were doing it for fun or to rub people the wrong way, mbiras are ours. And a good mbira player, and having a good mbira player would, in fact, I would love my brother Mark, if he can play them, to play them, because he loves mbira, I love mbira, and it would be a good send-off. There's nothing wrong. And would I not mind having a biblical reading or a reading from the verses? That's fine, but it shouldn't be the central, because that's not, I'm living in a world of different religions and different beliefs, and I embrace them and I respect them. So if someone wants to come and pray a certain way, which is not the Christian way that we're used to, I think they should be embraced. They should be, because that's who I am. I love it all.
So let me pick up on your point and say, it's very important that even details like that, if people have preferences, they record them. Because in the absence of a record, we normally do what seems to be the norm, and usually it's the family that decides, because it's really the family giving you a send-off. So the family, in that case, the family are going to do what is comfortable with them. If you have specific requirements, it would be good to state them beforehand. For me personally, very comfortable with the Christian. I mean, if someone was to come and play a good Mbira song as part of that, no particular issue, but I would like certainly to have a Christian service done. Now, I would say this actually happened in our family, that one of the funerals there was a conflict between Christians and the friends of the deceased, and there was a serious clash of cultures. These are singing church songs, these are singing pop songs, and it was chaos, and it's not good. I actually wish, in hindsight, the deceased, before they passed on, stated that this is what I would like to do. Then it takes away the confusion. But normally it's being done according to what makes the family comfortable.
I'm laughing. And I'm not advocating for nonsense. But and I hear what you say. But you know what it brings to surface is we like to do that. The deceased is good no matter what. Sometimes it's not the truth. And I'm going to refer. There was a scene that happened when a father spoke for their child on what they thought was wrong done by the deceased. And it's because of this wafa anaka. And you let a priest go in front of the church and speak. It's almost lies, about this person, because everybody who's died, you have to send them also, they can be channeled to go to heaven and not to the hell. But if it was a hellish sort of person who has just left, why are we trying to sanitize it? But also we need to have control, because this is a send-off. We are sending this person off. There should be some kind of sane control. If someone is going to say ill-spoken words, I don't think they should be given a forum to disrupt the whole thing. But then make sure you minimize the speechifying, so that people don't exaggerate things that are not true. And we tend to do that at the funerals. If I wasn't that good, just say in simple words, we are sorry she's gone, but we are all going to go to the upper room at some point, and leave it at that. Instead of trying to sanitize. What if the people that have wronged are sitting right there, and they want to just spit on my coffee, and you are now lying and saying all sorts of things that are good when it wasn't the truth. We need to make sure that those things don't happen. Come on. It's because we are so scared that the dead person is going to do what, and what, anyway.
I'd like to also say something there, though, that in people's final moments, we may not necessarily be there, right? And sometimes someone has lived a very rough life, but when they are now in that moment of, they can't do anything about their condition. Maybe they come to terms with their creator. That's what we normally hope, that they've come to terms, and we might still be judging them on what they have done in the past, whereas they repented. And from a biblical perspective, it talks about the thief on the cross. He was already on the cross dying, and he asks that, please forgive me, and he was considered. If you were to consider his life before, you wouldn't have sung a church song and all that. But the guy gave his life to Christ on the cross, and Jesus Christ honored it. So I kind of think that, one needs to bear that in mind. And generally, funerals are very kind of places where you want to give hope
Mm.
also to the people that remain.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes that's where I'm agreeing with you in terms of it must be orderly, it must be, we must tell the truth. However, we must also leave the people that are surviving with hope, or for them to reform their lives and live their lives better. Because it's very important that we live our lives right. We try and do the best that we can with the few days that we have been allowed to survive on this earth.
And you know, part of that order comes from us being prepared to make sure that there is order
Right.
when we are not there.
Right.
So if we are to have our estate in order, our plans in order, who's going to get what, who's not going to get what, then it creates some order. But because some of us don't have those things in place, that's why we see some of those disorders. You know, but I totally agree with what both of you have said in terms of, you know, making sure that we are prepared. We're talking about this stuff. So, yeah.
You know, I'm doing this so that we can kind of, as a people, normalize these conversations with our families, especially with our families. Let's normalize conversation about this, because I think it's an important area of life that we need to talk about. I know you all want to, you all want to see me at my house doing projects and all that, but what I'm talking about is what is part of life, and it is something that we need to have to have a conversation about.
My one word, my phrase is shida moyo hamba yakada makwati.
Yes, I agree.
That's some deep stuff.
This is deep.
Meaning, respect my wishes. I think it's important that when people make their choices, those choices should be respected. We mustn't come and say, no, we're going to impose things. I've made a choice. Respect my choice and everyone's choice, as long as that choice has been made when the person is not incapacitated mentally or in any way, then that must be respected, and it's very important that we do that.
How about last word?
I say 100% to what he just said.
Yeah. So here's the thing: live your life, love, and have fun. And we'll see each other on the next video. Bye.